Hey there.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Let me see if I can get you in my headphones. Okay, can you hear me now or?
Yep. Can you hear me?
Yeah, but I guess my headphones aren't working. Whatever.
Oh, you can't hear me?
No, I can hear you. It's just like not.
Okay. All right. What's new?
So I feel like I've just been finishing going over my, what do you call it? My last practice test. And I was just wondering if we could look at the first cards packet passage.
Yeah, this is the AMC free scored one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, let me share my screen. I also really like the what is it called? The Jack Weston extension. I feel like it's really nice.
Yeah,
Oh,
let's see it in like the proper MCAT format, which it's weird that AMC doesn't let you do that, like considering they're the ones who actually make the test. So yeah, I could definitely help with that.
I'm like, how do I move the thing at the top so that I could switch tabs? I'm like, am I just like I can't I don't know. Wait, hold on. Let me stop sharing so that figure out how to do that. Okay, you could see
Mhm.
this is the one. Okay, I just redid this one and I only got one wrong, so I was happy about that. But
That's good.
yeah, can you see?
And I guess there's no way to fit the entire passage on the screen. You zoom out some more. Okay. That's good. That's good. I guess that's good too. Okay. Um, all right. So yeah, why don't you um yeah, start reading it and going over like, each sentence and what they're trying to say in the sentence, if it's a new idea, same idea, if there's support, etc.
Okay. Um, as accustomed as we have become to the idea that scientists construct theories and produce explanation, and regardless of the controversies among scientists, the fact remains that they only disclose to us a world that came into being without the sciences or other human contributions. Um, I think what the author is saying, is that like we got accustomed to scientists coming up with theories and they come up with explanations for things that were there before the sciences were there and before humans had anything to do with it.
Yeah, so it seems like it's saying like, it's almost like a contrast. Like they're saying, although we're used to the idea that scientists construct, and we have that in quotes, um, theories and produce explanations. Um, what do you think the quotes kind of mean?
I think it's like quotes is like it's like I guess it's like normalized, but I guess the author is trying to say that it's not like they don't necessarily agree with it.
Very good, very good. Uh, okay, and then they say, and regardless of the controversies among scientists, the fact remains that they only disclose to us a world that came into being without the sciences or other human contributions, right?
Yeah.
So we're saying, okay, we're used to the idea of scientists making theories and explanations, but the truth is that what science can show us is a world that came into existence without either science or any other human, um, I guess,
Interference.
yeah, or, ways of understanding. I'm thinking of like maybe like philosophy or art or something like that. But, yep, okay.
Galileo may have conceptualized and formalized the phases of Venus, but the phases themselves have been manifestly always existed. So I think the author is just like reiterating what they said before. Where,
So now this is evidence, right?
yeah,
So like the first sentence, of course, the new idea, and this one is going to be same idea, like example or evidence. So I'm going to just put this like in orange to say that, yeah, Galileo, he did some science in terms of like the phases of Venus, but that stuff has always existed even before Galileo and before people. Right? So I think this example makes the first sentence, which is pretty abstract, a lot more clear, right? It's like, so like, could you give me like another example of something like that?
I guess like Mendelian genetics, how he found well he like discovered it, but it was always there.
Yeah, exactly. Another thing I'm thinking of is like nuclear fusion. That's something that we made in like, kind of like right after World War II with hydrogen bombs, and that's something that has always existed in like the sun. So good, good. Um, yeah, you're showing me that you're like reading actively, you're digesting the example and then able to make a new example, which is very good. Because they could always ask something like that. Like they could say, okay, suppose that, we're talking about, inheritance and stuff. How would this relate to the passage, etc. Okay, good.
Galileo's fabricated hypothesis simply became the acknowledged fact. I think maybe I should highlight the fact that the author put fabricated. I guess that shows how they feel about his hypothesis.
Sure, yeah. I think this sentence just kind of condenses that argument with the Galileo example.
Mhm.
But yeah.
By contrast, in conceptualizing technological projects, engineers produce fictions. So I think that's like one of the author's arguments.
Yeah. And by contrast is actually like a contrast word, right?
Yes, contrast, yes.
And so now we're talking like so a contrast word means we're talking about something else. And so now we're talking about engineers in conceptualizing technological projects. Engineers can produce fictions, I guess. But the reason I'm making a distinction between engineers and I guess scientists is because of that by contrast part.
Sure.
Mhm.
The technology concern does not, and by definition, could not exist since it's in the project phase. So, it's saying that the because they're like working with the technology, like it's not necessarily it's it's not solid, I guess.
Okay. So that's in contrast to the scientist who like discovers something that always,
Mhm.
whereas an engineer creates something that's new, right?
Yeah.
So, so yeah, so that contrast words are always going to be very like helpful in helping us find like, well, of course, like things in contrast, but also like usually the stuff after the contrast is pretty important. So, what could we say for this paragraph?
I think it's stating the author's main arguments, and then it gives us like some evidence of like Galileo as being someone who kind of just discovered something that was always there. And then the author's comparing it to engineers who actually create and I guess like innovate technical projects. Like,
Yeah. So I put scientists make theories of already existing nature, for example, Galileo, unlike engineers who create new things.
so for the second paragraph, it says this tautology frees the analysis of technological proposals from the burden of confirmation necessary in the analysis of scientific hypothesis.
All
Okay, yeah. It's saying because it's in the project phase, it doesn't have to confirm anything or confirm that it works yet. It's more so they're gonna just like messing around to see what works, I guess.
Okay, so this tautology frees the analysis of technological proposals from the burden of confirmation necessary in the analysis of scientific hypotheses. So, sorry, what were you saying about this?
Um, I was saying that it doesn't necessarily need to be solidified when it comes to engineers working on their technological projects.
It
Um,
seems like it's saying that the engineer doing, making technological projects and stuff are freed
yeah.
from the burden of confirmation that scientists require. So it's almost like although, in paragraph one they said that engineers create things, whereas scientists more so discover things. Now we're saying that makes it almost easier for the engineer because they don't need to confirm some scientific principle, right? Like, um, so I'm thinking of like, okay, like let's say someone invented, a car. Um, that person does not have to prove like how a motor works or like thermodynamics or gravity or anything like that. A scientist, on the other hand, would have to prove something like that, like a law. So we're kind of making it like, you know, like so first we're saying, okay, engineers actually make new things, unlike scientists, and now we're saying, but they have less of a obligation to explain like why certain things work.
I see.
Yes.
One might argue, of course, that Diesel did not create the principles he applied in his engine any more than Galileo created the astronomical principles he observed.
Oh, that
And
was
so
exactly what I was thinking of, like
you,
an engine or something.
Yeah,
But okay, yeah, what are they saying here? And like, yeah, it's okay to like, analyze it in parts.
gotcha. Um, it's saying that even though Diesel created the engine, that some people might say that like the principles in which he used, like the scientific principles that he used to make um the engine, like he didn't make himself. So um technically like he could be in the same boat as Galileo in terms of kind of just discovering something that was always there.
Yeah, yeah. So like, yeah, so now so we had our first so the first sentence of this paragraph is like the new idea. Now this is the same idea, like with an example, and we have, Diesel, the engineer who made the engine, and he doesn't have the burden of proving, the principles behind that engine. Um, and Galileo, like, did create some principles, but those are the principles that he observed that were already there. So, um, okay, and then this other part says, and some would even contend that the engine was therefore as much beyond the control of Diesel as Venus was beyond the control of Galileo. So, so yeah, I guess they're saying that the principles behind the engine are have existed before Diesel, just like the thing with Venus existed before Galileo. So some similarities that we're looking at now.
Yes. Even so, few would seriously defend the proposition that the diesel engine had always existed and needed only to be discovered. So, I guess the author is going, well, I guess the author just brought up the previous argument just to say like what people might say, but now the author is, I guess, um, arguing against that, saying that some they some people wouldn't agree that the engine always existed and only needed to be discovered because I feel like you have to build an engine.
Yeah, so do you think this sentence is trying to say something like, okay, so it's like common knowledge that the diesel engine was something that just needed to be discovered, or is he saying something uh different?
I think he's saying something different. I don't think he's saying that it's common knowledge.
Good, because we see it says, even so, few would, defend the proposition that the diesel engine had always existed. So, like, so okay, so we're kind of talking about how the engineers and scientists are similar here,
Hmm.
but we're also saying that they're not exactly the same because even though Diesel discovered, I guess, maybe principles to help him make the engine, it's not like the engine always existed in nature.
Right.
So, yeah.
In reference to technology, Platonism is considered an extreme philosophical stance. So I guess this is like transition to the next paragraph.
Yeah, so I guess they're saying, yeah, so they're saying um something called Platonism and how when you apply that, and it's a philosophical stance, when you apply it to technology, it could be considered an extreme philosophical stance. So, okay, what can we say for this?
For the paragraph. Um, and we're saying that it's talking again about the fact that engineers don't have to have the burden of confirmation, like via the scientific hypothesis, and then the author uses the example of Diesel and Galileo and shows how they could possibly be similar, but then at the end of the paragraph, the author states that even so few would still defend the proposition that the engine had already existed and just only needed to be discovered. So
Okay.
I think it's just kind of restating what was said at the end of the first paragraph.
Okay, so I put error to the above, freeze tech, and I'm going to use tech as an engineer interchangeably. So freeze tech from from the burden of confirmation that scientists need, and we have an example with the diesel engine and Galileo. But the engine didn't exist on its own, and when it comes to technology, Platonism is an extreme, I guess, view of that, and they'll probably, tell us more about it in the next paragraph.
The rejection of Platonism means greater freedom for those who study machinery than for those who study nature. Um, okay. I think this is stating again, like what the author was saying in the first and second paragraph, how there's more freedom, like when it comes to working in uh, technology slash machinery. And I guess like nature would be like how Galileo was looking at Venus. And I guess it's just saying that there's no freedom within that.
So is Platonism saying that?
Well, oh, my bad, the rejection.
So we could say, so like, okay, we could say then Platonism like could be less freedom, right? I guess I'll write that in the map, but since there's no word that says less freedom, I'll just put, okay, rejection Platonism means more freedom for the engineers than for those who are like the scientists studying nature. So that must mean Platonism means less freedom for those who study machinery compared to those who study nature. We still
Gotcha.
don't know what Platonism is, but we know the association so far.
The big issues of reality and plausibility do not bother the former.
Okay, what's that saying? When they say the former,
I guess it's talking about those who study um, machinery.
yeah, right? Like the term like for the former and the latter.
Yeah, it's like the former is like before.
Hmm. Yeah, so if I said like, okay, you could you could study CP and BB, and then if I'm referring to the former, I'm referring to CP. If I'm referring to the latter, um, referring to BB. So okay, reality and plausibility don't have any issues with the former, aka the studying of machinery.
Yeah, I just find that sentence confusing. Like, what are they talking about? Reality and plausibility?
Oh, for this over for that?
I guess they're just talking about like whether or not something's possible, like whenever they're doing like a technological project.
Yeah, so I think what that could mean is that, for instance, like a scientist would have to explain reality, like okay, like why does the Earth revolve around the sun? Like that's something that's there in reality, and a theory can plausibly explain that reality. And that's the business of the scientist, whereas the business of the engineer or the technical guy um, is more so like I'm gonna build something and I don't need to prove anything in reality. Um, you know, uh, I could just say like, okay, this is a car and you drive it and that's it. I don't need to. Whereas a scientist would be like, okay, like internal combustion engine causes like this pressure change and the friction of the tires, that kind of thing.
Gotcha. Engineers may freely create fiction since their projection of technological possibility from the present. I'm sorry. Since the projection of a technological possibility from the present or from 5 or 50 years in the future to a time T is a part of their job.
Hmm.
Okay.
It's
So it
like,
says here they may
yeah, go on.
it says here they may freely create fiction. So I guess that's I guess referring to how they don't have to bother with reality. Um since their job is to, I guess, advance to create technological advances. It's a part of their job.
Yeah, so we're saying that engineers, like, okay, so we said that they don't have to worry about reality and plausibility. And also, like, yeah, if that sentence didn't make sense, like, I would, like, if any sentence doesn't make sense, maybe I would say to reread it once. And if it still doesn't make sense, just move on because chances are it'll be like condensed and, elaborated on in a way that would make it easier to understand. And like if it's really important, it'll be like, mentioned more than once. So if we didn't understand this sentence about the big issues of reality and plausibility, we could then see that what they're really saying, I guess, is engineers they make fictions, and then they say since the projection of a technological possibility from the present. And now these sentences are going to be super long and it's easy to get lost in them. So, like, okay, so like if I had some word, comma, some stuff here, comma, and then like a word and then I end it, like I could treat these two commas in between as parentheticals and I could just connect these terms. So
I
like
see.
for instance, it says that so engineers may freely create fictions because the projection of a technological possibility from the present, comma, I can turn this into open parentheses, this as a closed parentheses, and now I can see that they're saying the projection of a technological possibility from the present is a part of their job. So what we're saying here, so that's just like a good like I guess uh a way to like understand like a really long sentence because they have so much stuff inside of that it's really hard to catch it.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I heard you.
So then so then I could say that yes, engineers can make fiction because the they're projecting this technological possibility from the present to sometime in the future. So maybe I'll say like projection, future, part of their job. Okay.
They invent a non-existent means of transportation with paper passengers, opportunities yet to be created, hypothetical places to be served, in parentheses, often to be themselves designed from scratch, new competent industries, and assumed technological revolution, and assumed. So I think this is just giving a list of examples of things that engineers could come up with.
Let's see, a non-existent means of transportation with paper passengers, opportunities yet to be created, hypothetical places to be served, often to be themselves designed from scratch, new component industries, an assumed technological revolution. Okay, what's a way that we can kind of sum this stuff up?
Um,
I guess we can say that these are like, I guess, examples.
yeah.
But I think the main thing here is just that so we're the previous sentence of the engineers making things that are projections from the present, meaning they make things that don't exist, right? Uh,
Hmm.
they are giving us some examples of that. So if they make some type of uh, means of transportation, like that did not exist beforehand. Um, and then opportunities yet to be created, and then hypothetical places. Um, New component industries, assumed technological revolution. Like these are stuff that don't exist in reality, but uh, can exist in the future, and that's the what the engineers preoccupied with. Mhm.
They are novelists with one difference. Their project, although initially indistinguishable from a novel, will either remain a possibility in a file or be transformed into an object. Um, so I guess the author is just making a comparison between them and novelists. Um, I guess because it's like they're coming up with I don't know, they're creating something. And I guess the difference is that what the engineer is creating could actually be made into an object.
Mhm. Yep. So their like I guess initial ideas could be the same as that of a novel, but what's different is like the project could I guess remain in a file or be like actually transformed into an object, right? So
Mhm.
we put here.
Oh, for the paragraph. Well, first the author starts off talking about Platonism and how I guess it's like if you go against it, it would mean greater freedom for those who study machinery. And then the author continues to talk about how engineers create fictions in order for, I guess, like technological progress over time. And then the author gives examples. And then the author also compares engineers to novelists um, that could actually make their ideas come to life.
Yeah, yeah. So I put Platonism means less freedom for tech. And that just me because they said the rejection means greater freedom. So I'm just
Hmm.
simpler like that. Because they create fictions, and you can kind of actually see that novelist connection now with
Yeah.
the idea of creating fiction, right? Because novelists create fiction. Uh,
Mhm.
and I just put like future objects, for example, transportation, etc. And then like novelists, the prototype is a novel is like a novel, and but unlike a novel, it can be transformed into like an object.
So for the third, I mean fourth, for projects and the objects to which they pertain are indistinguishable. So this is still continuing about the the novel.
Yeah, so now since we're using the word project, I'm actually gonna go back here and highlight that. I thought I was being cool by writing prototype, but project I'll just put there too, just because that's how they refer to it after.
Yeah.
So yes, we're saying at first the projects and the objects to which they turn into at first are the same, right?
Yes.
Okay.
The two concepts circulate from office to office in the forms of plans, memos, discussions, scale models, and occasional synopses. This is more evidence that they are indistinguishable, and it shows how the different forms that it could take.
Mhm.
In this stage of signs, language, and text, people influence the object. So it's saying that while it's being circulated in those different forms, a lot of people have like a bunch of different things to say about what's being made. I mean, about the object itself.
Yeah, yeah. Like so people have influence on what's going to be made. All right, good.
But once the project is realized and the object is real, it is people outside of their offices who are who are influenced by it. Cornucopian, or no, no, no. Uh, Coper, like a Copernican revolution. A
Oh yeah,
co
like Copernicus.
Oh yeah, yeah, Copernicus.
Hmm.
Um, so this is saying that even though it starts off being indistinguishable and it starts off as like a bunch of different forms and a lot of people have influence on the object, it's saying like once the object is actually there, it's able to help. Well, I guess I'm adding help, but I guess it's able to influence a lot of different people, like a car, like the engine.
Yeah, so in its initial phases, the project phase, it's similar to the novel, and sorry, in the project phase, it's similar to the object that it's supposed to turn into, and people can influence that. But when the object is made, um, the object is what influences people rather than the other way around,
Mhm.
right? And yeah, they call it a Copernican revolution. And
The gulf between the world of symbols and the world of things is then apparent. So I guess this is still talking about how it's still talking about the difference between the object and the project, I'm assuming.
mhm.
Um,
Yeah, so I noticed that they're mentioning symbol because prior to this they mentioned something about like signs, language, and text. So symbols is related to that, like
okay.
a way that people can influence the object. Um, and then the other thing is the object influencing people. So there's a gulf between the two. There's a separation between the two.
Mhm.
Okay.
The R3 312 is no longer a fiction that carries me away in transports of delight. It's a bus that transports me along the Boulevard St. Michael. So I guess the author is using an example of the bus and how I guess like when it first was come about, like I guess they were saying, I don't know, like not I'm not saying that people were saying that they were carrying him away in transports of delight, but um he's just like, okay, the bus is able to get me to where I need to be.
Yeah. right? Uh so yeah, this R312 thing no longer like yeah, when it actually turns into so okay, I guess they're saying that once the project turns into the object, you can then see that there's a big gap between the project and the object. And an example is this R312 thing that is no longer this fiction, which used to be like in its project phase, but is now the object, and the object, you know, does this function of transporting this person. Um, there could be some elements of like maybe maybe carrying me away in transports of delight could be related to well, I was trying to see if there's a relationship if about or between the prod like the person influencing the project and then the object influencing the person. Um, but I guess I don't really see that. But I see the part where the object influences the person. So, okay, what can we put for this paragraph?
It's talking about how initially objects and the projects are similar, and once it is made into plans, memos, discussions, and it's circulated throughout the project team, uh, the project is now a real object,
Mhm.
and it is able to influence a large amount of people. And then the author gives an example of the bus that they take.
They put at first the project in which people influence it equals the object in which it influences people, like a Copernican revolution. But then the gulf between the two gets like wider. Maybe I'll say like, yeah, wider. And then we have the example of the R312.
Still, the creators of technology do not rigidly differentiate symbol from thing, project from object, the novel that excites separation from reality inscribed in the nature of things.
Okay. What are you saying?
Um,
So what are we saying here?
it's saying the creator. uh, I don't know. I'm kind of confused. I guess it's talking about the difference between science. Hmm. It says the nature of things.
Yeah, so now I see that they're talking about like this novel thing again, and then I actually I looked back to this previous paragraph that says, yeah, this R312 stopped being a fiction that carries him away in transports of delight. And I guess that could mean something like a novel. Like if you're reading a novel, it can carry you away and transport you to this other place, like in your mind, right?
Yeah.
So now in this last sentence or last paragraph here, they're saying that, okay, still the creators of technology don't really differentiate the symbol from the thing, or in other words, the project from the object. And we said that the project was more so like the novel. And it says the novel that excites speculation from the reality inscribed in the nature of things. And that made me think back to this part. Like the novel, like the R312 used to be like a novel in that it can excite this speculation, right?
Yeah.
So I think yeah, so they're saying that this difference that we've been talking about all through, and like also like we should have a pretty good idea of like the main idea now because of the repeated arguments seem to be that there's a difference between scientists and let's say engineers, and engineer people have a like project phase which is similar to a like that of a novelist, and but unlike that of a novelist have like a object phase.
Yes. Um, For as the R312 passes progressively from fiction to fact, its engineers repeatedly pass between speculative and the practical realms. I guess this is talking again about how it's going from like the novelist fiction to the fact would actually be like the objects. So it's saying that they go back and forth between yeah, speculative and I guess like it's like hypothetical and then like the real world. Um, the capacity to be liberated from an exclusive concern from reality and to soar into unrealized potential that is unrealized potential is the quality that gives technological fiction a beauty that the literary novel and a form inherited from the naturalistic 19th century has difficulty in approaching. Um, I would say it says here that the technological fiction has the capacity to be liberated from reality. So it just gives them more to work with.
Yeah, it seems,
And
yeah, go on.
and the naturalistic 19th century, like the I guess like back in the day, that was more so focused on like the real world is it couldn't understand um what technological fiction is doing.
So let's see. They say that the capacity to be liberated from an exclusive concern from reality. So it can move away from reality and to soar into unrealized potential. So from reality to this hypothetical kind of thing is the quality that gives technological fiction a beauty that the literary novel and this stuff here, I'm just gonna like get rid of it because it's just gonna get in the way. But now we can see that it's saying that the capacity for like this technology or object moving away from reality and going into the hypothetical and stuff gives this type of technology uh something special that a regular novel can't give you, right? So like the reason
Yes.
that I blocked out this stuff is because You see there's the two commas, like here and here.
Mm-hmm.
And though since like the sentences are long and stuff, that stuff could easily like confuse you. So so what I'm really seeing is just that, okay, this capacity to go from purely reality to this hypothetical thing is what gives technological fiction, which isn't really, I mean, it's not like a genre of novel, right? It's like the act of making technology, right? And
Yeah.
that's something that the novel can't give you. The novel can't combine the um reality part or moving away from reality part to go into the unrealized potential. It can only stay as the unrealized potential, right? So I think this would be highlighting like one of the differences. So I would probably say that like liberated from reality and soar into like unrealized potential that like the literary novel can't really do, but technological fiction can do.
Yes.
Okay.
Only a fiction that is capable of gaining or losing reality can do justice to engineers. Those those great unhonored figures of culture and history. So I guess the author is saying that engineers are they don't get as much credit as they deserve. And it's just they're also applauding the fiction
Hmm.
that can move between reality and not reality.
Yeah. So a fiction that can either gain or lose reality. So, we talked about gaining reality from like turning in going from a project to an object. Um, and then we talked about, losing reality just I think in the previous like few sentences that talk about, the R312 passes from fiction to fact. Well, actually,
Hmm.
that's still fiction to fact, but they said something like, yeah, okay, the capacity to be liberated from it, an exclusive concern of reality and soar into unrealized potential. That's the other way around of going from or of losing reality, right?
Yeah.
So, okay, yeah, so gaining or losing reality is something that technological fiction, which we're now just equating to, and in cars you're going to be equating a lot of words to each other. So like I equate that to be like the engineer, the person who invents stuff. Um, and yeah.
Okay.
Oh, and then yeah, and then it says can do justice to those to engineers, those great unhonored figures of culture and history. So that statement just kind of gives you an idea of the author's tone, and that could help with questions like, the questions are like, what type of publication would this article be in? Or something like, what would you think the job, of the author is, or something like that. And you can see that he's very like pro engineer,
Hmm.
like, yeah.
A fiction with a variable structure it is this flexibility to which we must aspire in tracking a technological project. So the author is saying that the fiction, like again, talking about how the variable structure where it's like gaining and losing reality, and talking about the value of the flexibility and how the author believes it should be in um, all technological projects.
Okay. So let's see. For this paragraph, we're saying, yeah, what can we say here?
Um, it's talking about how technology moves from fiction to fact, and how the engineers go through different realms to get to the object. Um, it's then talking about how, in comparison to the technology, to the literary novel, is that the technological fiction has more potential that a literary novel cannot approach.
Mhm.
And then it talks again about how the fiction is going back and forth between reality and the variable structure within a technological project is valuable to the author.
Mhm. So we could say technological fiction back and forth between fiction and fact. For example, the R 312. And a literary novel cannot do this. And tech can, or tech has variable structure slash flexibility. And um, engineers are great, I guess. So yeah, tech fiction back and forth between fiction and fact. For example, R312. A literary novel cannot do this. And then tech has variable structure slash flexibility, and engineers are highly regarded by the author. So, okay, let's now. So, what do we do now?
Um,
Main idea time, right?
oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, how do we determine a main idea?
It's the argument that's stated multiple times throughout the passage. Um, so I guess like the author really enjoys engineers, like they think engineers deserve a lot of appreciation. Talks about how engineers have more fluidity than scientists that are already coming up with theories that basically exist regardless of whether or not they discover them. Um, and that engineering gives the engineer itself more freedom to explore different things, like in terms of like the fiction and how it could go and forth between reality and fiction until the object that they're working on is real. And the author gives examples of that throughout the passage.
Yep. So yeah, I would do like a quick kind of read through of like the map. So we're saying paragraph one that scientists make theories that about things that already exist in nature, unlike engineers who create new things. Paragraph two, the engineers are freed from that burden um of comfort like of confirmation that scientists need. And we have some examples with the diesel engine, and like we could make the argument that the engine didn't exist on its own, so how could we say engineers, unlike scientists, must create new things? And then we just talk a little bit about Platonism or whatever, and then we say paragraph three, something about Platonism, um less freedom for tech because they create fiction, and that they're like novelists. And there's a difference between the project part and the object part. And then paragraph four, we talk about the project part and the object part, so that's repeated. And paragraph 5, we talk about that as well. So it seems like, we started off talking about the difference between scientists and, let's say, engineers. Um, but we kind of stopped talking about that. And then we started to talk more so about engineers and how they're like this upgraded type of novelist that's able to turn this fiction into fact, right?
Yes.
So it seems like it's more so like maybe like paragraph 3, 4, and 5.
Hmm. That's where the main idea comes in.
I think so, yeah. So let's see. We could say engineer, uh, like novelists, create fictions, but unlike novelists, turn them into reality, perhaps.
Yeah.
And oh, and vice versa, right? Because they can also go back in the opposite direction.
Yeah.
All right, cool. So yeah, take a screenshot of like, everything, the highlights and the map and everything. Okay. You got it?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's try some of these questions.
Which of the following phrases best expresses the sense of Platonism that is conveyed in the passage, paragraph 2? Um, A, the expression of the human spirit through the realm of ideas. B, the derivation of cause and effect from observable relationships. C, the preexistence of concepts that are prototypes of real objects. D, the inseparability of physical matter and the particular form it takes. Um, well, in our concept map, it says, or map, it says Platonism is less freedom. Oh, yeah, 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 because they create. Yes, there you go. Platonism is it's against the fiction that
Mhm.
engineers have. Um,
You could try it like this. Hmm.
okay.
So we wrote Platonism means less freedom for the engineers because they create fictions, right?
Yeah.
So we would
So
want, yeah,
I guess I would want for it to say something like Platonism is about I guess it would be like the more scientific approach where it's like discovering something
okay.
because it's creating less freedom for tech because it doesn't seem like Platonism supports fictions.
Okay. Let's see. Actually, let's go back to this. So the rejection of Platonism means greater freedom for those who study machinery than for those who study nature. The big issues of reality and plausibility do not bother the former. Engineers may freely create fictions since the projection of a technological possibility from the present or from 5 to 50 years in the future is a part of their job. Hmm.
So I guess what it's saying is that Platonism, it says here it doesn't bother the former, like the big issues of reality and plausibility. Doesn't bother people who work with machinery or the engineers because they create fictions and I guess like different innovations over time. So I guess the sense of Platonism is so like I don't I feel like engineers are rejecting it and it just has less freedoms. But it works for the scientists.
Okay. So we could say so like would Platonism be related to more creating more fictions or less?
Less.
So I think that could be confusing because they say that the if you reject Platonism, you have that greater freedom, and that freedom could involve creating fictions.
Yeah.
So maybe we could say that Platonism in is connected to the creation of the fictions, right?
Even though it's the rejection though.
So it seems like you're saying that if you reject Platonism, you have greater freedom. And then, well, I guess I'm like kind of confusing myself here. Rejection of Platonism, more freedom, more freedom, more fiction.
Yeah. But that's with the rejection.
Hmm. Okay.
So yeah, that's why I was saying I feel like Platonism would go best with the people who study nature.
Okay. So,
So
okay, we maybe we could like process of elimination this. So, um, yeah. Oh, okay.
uh so I don't think it's A. We're just
Yeah.
talking about the expression of human spirit through the realm of ideas. So definitely we get rid of that one.
Okay.
Um I feel like it could be B because it's talking about observable relationships, and I guess that's like the opposite of fiction. Um, the pre-existence of concepts that are prototypes of real objects. Um, I guess that could possibly work too, but I also feel like they weren't really talking about um objects. They were mainly talking about I guess it does say machinery though.
Yeah, so I think that like honestly I'm a bit confused about the rejection part, but then when I look at the choices, I was like, okay, I think I get it. Because there's only one choice that talks about stuff that's related to like the main idea, right?
Hmm.
Oh, and they're even using the word prototype like I did over here.
Yeah, I mean like I feel like C works, but I'm also just, I don't know, I feel like B is so tempting at the same time, but I guess it's not really talking about like um cause and effect.
Yeah, right. So like okay, so A expression of the human spirit never talked anything about that. Um B, the derivation of cause and effect from observable relationships. Like maybe that could at best be something like like a scientist could do, like observe, the phases of Venus and, you know, come up with some hypothesis that formalized it. But not really something that they really talk about much. And then D, the inseparability of physical matter and the form it takes, totally out of scope. And so
Yeah.
E, the pre-existence of concepts that are the prototypes of real objects. Now, if they're telling us in this passage, in paragraph 3, I guess, yeah, like they say it more in paragraph 3 than paragraph 2, but they're referring to paragraph 2.
Yeah, I guess it's because it's talking about how engineers like they create fictions and that's the rejection. So I guess it makes sense that it would be real objects.
Yeah. Platonism, less freedom for tech because they create fictions like future objects. So yeah, I would based on process of elimination, like yeah, we could get C because it's the only one that talks about that stuff.
Yeah. Um, the term Copernican revolution refers to the demonstration by Copernicus that the apparent daily orbiting of the Earth by the sun is illusory and that Earth actually orbits the sun. In applying this term to a different phenomenon in paragraph 4, what idea does the author evidently mean to imply? So this is talking about how the affects people now, or object influences people. Because at first the people that made the object were influencing the object. Um, so I guess it says um, object that is designed according to engineering principles is as real as a scientific finding. Um, I don't know. I feel like I don't think that's it. Um, a project that may result in an object remains an illusion until it is feasibly demonstrated. When an object results from a technological project, it becomes equivalent to a natural object. When humans must adapt to an object designed by humans, the source of control has reversed. Um, I don't think that it's D.
Hmm. Let's try it this way. So, okay, they're saying the Copernican revolution refers to the demonstration by Copernicus that the apparent daily orbiting of Earth by the sun. What does that mean?
Uh, that the Earth revolves around the sun, but actually, wait, no. The sun revolves around the Earth, but actually it's the Earth that revolves around the sun.
Hmm.
Mhm.
And in our map, where did we write stuff about the Copernican revolution? Oh, I guess they tell you, but yeah.
Yeah, I was saying that people influence the project, like when they're making it, but then the 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 object influences people. Thank you. So I guess what it's meaning to imply is that the object influences people.
So like at first people can influence it, like the idea that the sun revolves around us
Hmm.
makes it feel like we have an influence over it. And then finding out that the Earth actually orbits the sun could be like to show us that it's actually not us that influences it, but it influences us, right?
Yeah.
So we want to see something like uh what in our answer?
I guess like a comparison,
Of
a comparison of influence.
uh-huh. A shift in influence, right?
Hmm.
Okay.
Well, I don't think it's A.
Yeah.
Um, okay, yeah, I feel like it's D, when humans must adapt to an object designed by humans.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I don't know why they would word it like that, but okay.
Because it's the car section of the MCAT. They will never like yeah, they're gonna like even in the science sections, wording makes all the difference. Like you'll see it constantly. So like it somewhat to an extent it makes sense because if you're a doctor and like, let's say someone tells you like something that's like you don't catch or whatever, like I'm allergic to penicillin and you're like, okay, here, take this moxicillin and stuff and then kill them, you don't want that. So they're very I call it like hyper literate.
Hmm.
Word mean like subtle differences in words mean everything. So uh but yeah, this is just us using our strategy of like because a lot of times it's really just the stuff that's in front of you that is holding you back. And it's ironic because people think or typically think it's like to do better, I must learn more, but it's almost like a lot of times to do better is to do less. So here we're talking about this Copernican revolution, and
Hmm.
we see that we have a shift in this type of mindset or something like that. Even without going into like the paragraph and the map, like at the very least, we can see that they're talking about a shift, right? So
Yeah.
that could be what we can look for. So like A doesn't talk about a shift. B maybe talking about a shift, like something can look like an illusion until you see that it's actually realistic. But it's not really a shift like the one in the question stem, where
Yeah.
shifting, you know, what influences what. Um, C could be like a trap answer because they use the word technological project and the word object, right?
Hmm.
And they love to, make trap answers like that. And then, yeah, D is the closest one because it has that shift. And even though they're not saying it's not like a perfect comparison, it's not like if the sun revolves around the earth, it's not like we on earth have control over that. So it's not like perfect, but it's still that shift, right?
Yes. Yeah. I'm starting to get it because I feel like I was very drawn to that trap answer because
Hmm.
it was using like words that were throughout the passage.
Yep, yep.
A prototype exists of a solar fuel train with cars that are coupled electronically and that can decouple smoothly at branching points to carry out passengers to their destinations without change of trains. Experts say that this transportation system would eliminate traffic problems. How would the passage author probably answer the objection that the system would be too expensive to build? Um, Too expensive. Um, okay, well, looking back at our map, I feel like I think it could be B.
Okay, so this is pretty tough. So we have this new, overly detailed kind of, thing, prototype, whatever, and that this prototype, which we equate to project, which means not object, which means it's not made yet.
Yeah.
Doing that type of thing that I just did with words in cars is going to be really helpful as well. Um, so okay, some prototype exists that could be really good at eliminating traffic problems, but there's an issue in that it would be too expensive to build. So it seems like it's like nothing to do with, the passage, because the passage doesn't really, mention anything about cost, but that could work to our advantage because our passage main idea is that engineers um, are like novelists in that they create fictions, which is the project or prototype phase, and then they turn it into reality, right?
Yes.
So what could be, and like when in doubt, like whatever, choose the whatever's closest to your main idea, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking that it would be D, but then I just felt like it was like a crazy answer where it's like, oh, plan ahead with imagination isn't solid.
Mm-hmm. So, uh, so yeah. So like, I guess the another key thing here is that how would the passage author probably respond to this?
Okay.
Because, yeah, so either like, okay, by counseling patients until a cheaper solution is found, so that's like, okay, let's just wait. B, by predicting eventual savings in reduced highway costs. So that would be like, you know, kind of like, let's say, offsetting the expensive building of this by saying that because the benefit of this seems to be that it's going to eliminate, traffic problems. So, um, highway costs actually, I don't even because I was actually thinking if that meant like less traffic problems, but I don't know about highway costs necessarily. But and then C says by pointing out the inconvenience of traffic congestion. So like sure, we know that that could be inconvenient and that could be an incentive for this prototype because this prototype is supposed to eliminate traffic problems, but we have to, I guess, yeah, we have to see like how would the author respond to this and we can't have the author in front of us to tell us, so we have to the only thing that we have about the author is the passage, so we just have to use that. So it's almost like kind of forcing it. So if the passage author talked about the prototype phase involving, you know, create the creation of fiction. In other words, and you'll also see that like a lot of right answers will just be using different words. Making a fiction or creating fiction should involve your imagination, right? Because if it's fiction, it's made up. If it's made up, it would have to be imagination, right?
Yeah. I guess I don't, yeah, I feel like maybe I was just putting my own like thoughts into it.
Well, like, yeah, this is a very, very difficult passage. And I'll tell you more after the next test you take because I don't want it to affect your score, but I'll give you more information the next time.
Yeah. No, I mean, because like my friend, she like t took this and she normally gets like perfect score on cars and she told me she only got like a 127. So I was just like,
Yeah, yeah. So I guess I'll t whatever. So I guess I'll just tell you. Yeah, this is the hardest AMC exam, and
okay.
people called it AMC 5, but it's not AMC 5. It's the free scored exam, and if you're making a free exam, it makes more sense to make it difficult because if you make a free exam easy, people are going to be like, "All right, I don't need to buy anymore."
Mm-hmm.
So that's why like a lot of people like on Reddit and stuff say to take this as your last exam, but pretty much everyone, like all of my students who do that, um whether they take it at their last exam or their first, uh always score much lower on this test. So I have students do it first because you don't want to have your lowest score be like the week before your test, you know?
Yeah, I would be sad.
Yeah. So
But
like,
I'm like, okay, at least like I have a little bit of time to get it together. But
yeah,
this
yeah. A lot of my students who've gotten like 130s in cars got like 125 on like this. So this is a objectively tough one.
gotcha. The passage distinction between technology and science does not consider the role of imagination in the process of scientific discovery. I don't think that's not it. The flexibility of technological concepts in the project stage, I feel like it does. And C, possibility that potential objects may never be realized. And D, the difference in work done by engineers and scientists. I think it's C.
Let's see. So they're asking, okay, so difference between tech and science. So now we're actually talking about like, I guess the first two paragraphs.
Hmm.
And they're saying it what does the passage not consider when they're comparing technology and science?
Oh, wait, sorry. I guess it says here the role of imagination in the process of scientific discovery. Because I thought that said thought
Mhm,
there's engineering.
mhm.
Uh yeah, I feel like actually no, it could be A.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep. Because yeah, they talked about yeah.
Mhm. According to the author's account, the experience of working on an engineering project is least like that of a chef imagining a menu for dinner, a reporter gathering facts for an article, a travel agent in creating a vacation package, and an artist in making sketches for a mural. Um, I would say that it's least like B.
Good.
According to social psychologists, people tend to respond to words and symbols as if they were things to which they refer. What would the passage author be most likely to say about this tendency? Um, Most likely respond to words. It must be repeatedly overcome by engineers as a project progress towards its physical realization. It accords with the distinction between the hypotheses of scientists and the proposals of engineers. It explains the failure to honor great engineers who have turned projects into objects, and it overemphasizes on plans and working models in technological projects. Um, I'm confused about what this question is asking. People tend to respond to words and symbols. I guess the author didn't mention symbols. Um, Here in the end of the fourth paragraph over here. The gulf between the world of symbols and the world of things is apparent. Um, I think it could be A.
Yeah, right, because they're saying that there's a gulf between symbols and things, right? Which could mean the symbols could mean the projects,
Okay, yeah.
the things could mean the objects. And in the question stem, they're saying, and it's always good to rephrase the question stem to make sure you understand what they're asking, but they're saying that according to social psychologists, people uh treat symbols as things. And in the passage, the author makes a distinction between the two.
I see.
Mhm.
Um, what belief led the author to contrast the accomplishments of Galileo with those of Diesel? A, the natural designs, such as the orbit of Venus, are variable, whereas technology follows a straight path. B, the that a planetary orbit is predetermined, whereas the design of an engine is creative. C, that the discoveries of scientists provided the principles that would later be applied by engineers. So, and then D, that the phases of Venus provided new knowledge, whereas the engine followed known principles. I think I think it might be, I think it's B.
Yep. And I know they talked about diesel in paragraph two, but paragraph one, we see scientists make theories of already existing stuff. Engineers make new things.
Gotcha.
And also the author is like very pro engineer, so I would see that I would move away from choices that talk about engineers less like influential. Like C is saying, okay, scientists provided the principles that were later applied by engineers. That's like kind of saying engineers just kind of copied the scientists. D, this science thing, new knowledge, engine, known principles. Um, and perhaps this as well. So yeah, in addition to that, you have the tone of the author being kind of pro engineer. But yeah, this was a really tough passage. And but I think being able to like in cars mostly all the time, you can just kind of separate things in two. So like we started off separating engineers and scientists, and then we talk about within engineers. the difference between the hypothetical, like theoretical project phase and the object phase where it comes into a reality, and then we compare the engineer to a novelist by saying that they both have that like hypothetical, like theoretical aspect, but the engineers, unlike a novelist, can also create reality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm. Okay.
Right. Yep, that was a tough one.
Yeah.
So let's see. Okay, we did.
Uh, I gotta get back to the hospital. Hopefully I didn't miss anybody. Like it was just rough when I first came over here.
Yeah.
We just came in, she was like screaming. She kicked someone in the face. So it's
Jeez.
yeah,
So, yeah, so for today it should be 1:38.
gotcha.
And do you want me to put you in next time? Do you want to do it on Calendly?
Yeah, or I feel like I'll probably do next Friday, the 16th.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does What would be a good time? Does like
Well,
four,
I'm off taking off to study that day, so I was thinking maybe sometime in the morning. Or
uh
I'm not,
yeah. Do you
what
have
do you
anything at like any availability at like 4:15 kind of thing?
Yeah, that should be fine actually.
Okay.
Like better.
And how long do you want the session?
Um, Probably an hour because I'm gonna do
Hmm.
the C1 this weekend. Yeah,
Got it. Okay, I put you in for Friday the 16th at 4:15 Eastern.
gotcha.
All right, awesome. I will see you then, and good luck on your next test. And